Hello everyone and welcome to my bold and beautiful Today Update channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Talk about an emotional combo coaster. Like the guests at Eric's farewell party, I swore I wasn't going to cry while watching this week's occurrences of Bold and Beautiful. Yet once the event got afoot, I proved to be far weaker than the Forresters and Logans who'd gathered in the family mansion. Had lower to do with what happened on screen than the response it inspired. While watching Monday's occasion with my stylish friend, Zendo, who was arguing with Ridge and RG, mentioned Eric having won the fashion showdown. As one, my BFF and I screamed, "Do on tell him." And of course they did. But that combined moment of crying at the TV and also laughing when the characters refused to take our savant advice was a memorial of why cleaner suckers you, me, all of us, enjoy this medium so much. It also illustrated several other effects about detergents, like why they're further delightful watched with other people. I grew up watching with my mama A and latterly with Musketeers. Now, most of us do have those participated real-world guests, which might be why we flock to Twitter. And yes, it'll always be Twitter, no AX, for as long as I live and it exists. Still, he should have blazoned that he and Donna were getting wedded. If Eric really wanted to keep people from being suspicious about his nothing would question a quickie marriage at the family estate, given that nearly every union on this show happens in that fashion. Heck, it would indeed be the first time this particular brace went that route, as substantiated below. You could still play all the beats of everyone in attendance knowing the verity. Gashes could be explained down as being of the joyous variety. And it would show respect to Donna, whom Eric has pledged to take care of. That said, her not fairly being Moors, Eric Forrester could wind up being a big plot point in the future. But more on that in a bit. I kinda loved that. When Eric was talking about the event, the Forrester mans came commodity of a character in and of itself. That awful big old house, he reflects. So numerous awful effects have happened. My whole life, marriages and leaves and parties. Brooke and Ridge met in that house. When I spoke to Eric's last time, he recalled walking onto that particular set when rephotographing the veritably first occasion. It was so emotional. He reflects. I flashback allowing, wow, they really spending some plutocrat then. But I couldn't imagine just how important that beautiful space would come over the times. The party itself was much what I suppose we all anticipated, enough people trying hard not to look sad as their primogenitor tried not to cough up blood on his beautiful white tux. Actually, shouldn't Donna have suggested a color other than white, given his biggest symptom? After spending several weeks complaining about character who aren't in attendance, if I didn't get caught up in the drama of everyone participating their little moment with Eric as they tried to hold back the gashes. How am I supposed to not start crying and no way stop? Asked Bridget, speaking for all of us. The big party ended exactly how I assumed it would, with Eric collapsing, but the route the Pens took in getting there caught me completely out guard. I sort of assumed that Eric would find out the verity about the fashion showdown, which he did. But I didn't imagine that he'd take the news so well, declaring it the nicest thing anyone had done for him, and how incredibly cruel, in the stylish cleaner pieces way, to give us that moment of frivolity just before Eric collapsed and sounded to go into the light. Beautiful Bravo. Cutthroat. That ending was a thing of beauty. I mentioned before that Eric not marrying Donna might well play into what's coming up, and grounded on the spoilers for coming week. That clearly seems to be the case. It sounds as if the family who came together to rally around their ailing primogenitor will start to come piecemeal at the seams, appropriate pun purposeful. And of course, we knew that when Finn blew off the big event in order to furrow his virile brow at his office computer while scribbling unreadable notes in true he'd no doubt be cooking up a cure for what ails his grandfather. In law. But will his sweats pay off in time? Could he wind up creating a rift in his own marriage by mounting an experimental treatment only to have it boomerang? Occasionally, people have unhappy responses to bad news. So as awful as it sounded, I bought that Zendi's first response to the news of Eric's impending death was to suggest Ridge was just saying that to justify RJ getting to work with him. Speaking of Zende, didn't he take a big threat saying to the guests, pre-party, we all know the verity about Granddad, right? What if someone in the room hadn't known? era SI outfit Katie wore to Eric's big party was more gorgeous than anything their big fashion showdown. They mentioned that Hope was wearing a gown designed by Eric, but how cool would it have been if they'd made a point to have all the women in attendance wearing gowns Eric had designed over the losing their countenance at Eric's improvisational soiree. Ridge revealed Eric's condition to Zendi and to Thorne and Bridget when they arrived in city. Eric's poignant festivity took a turn when he realized he had not won the fashion. In Eric's office, Ridge was with Brooke and worried, because a party was the last thing he felt Eric should be allowing of. Ridge believed Eric should be at a sanitarium, getting tests. Ridge was hopeful that the tests could yield good news and Eric could stick around. Ridge ended a call with Raphael at International, who was inquiring about the launch. Ridge was sure it would be the last thing on Raphael's mind if he knew about Eric's condition. Brooke said there would be an outpour of love and concern. Ridge griped that Eric wanted Ridge to dress in a monkey suit and pretend everything was fine. Hope arrived and tasted that commodity was wrong. She guessed that it was Eric, but Brooke reported that Eric was in stable condition. Ridge fooled that it was so stable that Eric was throwing a party. Brooke added that Eric wanted his family around him for a night to flash back. Hope asked if the croak might suppose it was too important for Eric, but Brooke said stylish drug. Ridge complained, saying honesty was also the stylish drug, and they should tell Eric that they knew. Ridge thanked Hope for her support and left to sear. Hope and Brooke talked about Eric's party. Brooke said they had to watch about what Eric watched about, and the party was important to him. Hope wondered if Brooke, who had 2 children with Eric, could really pull off the facade of a continuance in front of a man who meant so important to Brooke. Brooke said they had to be strong for Eric because it might be the last thing he would ever ask of them. She claimed that they had to come that he'd never said he didn't, and he remarked that he'd been spending time with Eric. Zende asked if RJ would throw that in his face again. RJ said he'd never done that, but Zende replied that RJ had never paid his dues around there. RJ assumed Zende believed that Zende had. Zende asked what design school RJ had gone to. RJ told Zende that he knew RJ hadn't gone. Zende attempted to quiz his cousin on things one would learn in design school and said RJ had to admit that the family had rolled out the red carpet for him, and it was all because he was the golden child, Ridge and Brooke's son. RJ asked if Zende thought RJ's parents had forced Eric to work with their son. Zende was sure it had been finessed and said RJ was positioning himself for better things. RJ was upset that Zende thought RJ had ulterior motives in working with Eric and uttered, "If you only knew." Zende asked what he were cousins and shouldn't be fighting. RJ claimed that he'd been just as shocked when Eric had asked him. Zende believed Ridge had had something to do with it. RJ swore it had been Eric's decision. Zende, who wasn't buying it, asked for RJ to put himself in Zende's position and give one good reason Eric would choose to work with RJ, and he could give Zende reason. Ridge said RJ knew something Zen didn't, but it was time that Zende did. Ridge figured he should have told Zende a while back, and he asked if Zende had noticed any changes in Eric. Zende described Eric as being as driven as ever and noted that he'd won the fashion challenge. RJ murmured that Eric hadn't won, and Ridge affirmed that he'd just told Eric that Eric had won. Zen looked confused. Ridge decided that there was no easy way to say it, and he announced that his father was first, but silently became on the verge of tears. He uttered that Eric had accepted him from the moment he'd been adopted. Zende sobbed that Eric had always pushed Zende to be a better man and designer. Zende claimed he'd wanted to be just like Eric. Zende decided that he had to see Eric, but Ridge replied that he couldn't because Eric didn't want anyone to know. RJ added that Donna, Katie, and Luna knew. "Luna?" Zende repeated. Ridge asked Zende to respect Eric's wishes. Zende agreed not to say anything. He sobbed, saying that he loved Eric very much. Ridge replied that Eric loved Zende, and Ridge held Zende as Eric was unconscious on the floor, and Donna shook him. Donna panicked when she couldn't find a pulse on his wrist or hear his heartbeat. She found a pulse in his neck, and Eric slowly came to. Donna set Eric up with his oxygen tank. As he breathed into the mask, he asked what she was doing. She had her phone and wanted to call emergency services. He insisted that he was fine and that she shouldn't worry. Donna began to cry, saying she'd thought he'd been dead. He apologized for scaring her. She stated that she just wanted to take care of him. He said she could, but there would be no hospital and no doctors. Now, the party. We need to do it right away. I don't have much time, he concluded.